Hello everyone, my name is Norvia and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, first I'm going to update and finish off my April reading journal spreads, and then I'll do the beginning setup for my May spreads. The first thing I'll do is update my key and calendar. In the key, I write the names of the books I read and assign a color to them. Then I'll use that same color in the calendar to mark the days that I read each book. I was able to read 4 books this month. I read The Giver by Lois Lowry, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris, and Gathering Blue, the second book in the Giver series, again by Lois Lowry. After updating those, I'll flip the page to begin working on my first decorated review spread. The largest book that I read this month was Project Hail Mary, and I've been looking forward to reading this for quite some time. I've seen this book recommended to me on Audible, and it's one of the books that's on my top TBR list this year. The majority of this book takes place in space, so I wanted to use space elements a lot in this decorated spread. The cover of the book is a mix of yellow and black, so that's what I did for my washi tapes on the bottom. I used a bright yellow washi tape as background and layered my black moon washi tape on top of it. I also had a PET tape that featured bright watercolor splashes, and I thought that looked kind of cosmic as well, so I decided to use those. In the upper right corner of the spread, I glued down a sticky note that looked like Earth. As a last touch, I used some stickers from Sticky that featured silver gilded planets and stars. As for the actual book and its storyline, I was pleasantly surprised. While I did find some minor issues in this book, overall I really liked it and decided to give it a rating of 4.25 stars. The main character of this book is a man called Ryland Grace, and he's a middle school science teacher. At the beginning of the book, it's found out that Earth is facing a major crisis. It's been discovered that there's an alien amoeba in space that is consuming energy from the sun, and therefore making it dimmer, causing a lot of problems on Earth. Grace is then recruited by a woman named Strat, who has been put in charge of the survival efforts of Earth. He is assigned as the science expert and is sent into space on the Project Hail Mary to discover how to stop this space amoeba, which is called astrophage. This is a book with a lot of action and a lot of high stakes involved. However, even with the serious tone of the book, a lot of comedy is included as well. Through reading, I laughed a lot and learned a lot of science facts. I won't tell you any more than this since I don't give out spoilers in the voiceover. However, the written review will contain spoilers, so read at your own risk. This book is very science heavy and a lot of mathematical calculations and formulas are involved in it, so if that's not your thing, I wouldn't really recommend reading it. However, I personally felt that this wasn't too much for me and that it was a good balance of the science and being engaged in the story. Next, I'll flip backwards in my journal to start my spread for The Giver. I first discovered this book when it was an assigned reading in my English class in middle school. Back then, I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it so much that I went on to read and finish the entire series. I was thinking about this book again recently, and decided it'd be a good time for a reread. It had been so long that I had forgotten a lot of the minor details, and I thought I would still enjoy it as if it was for the first time. As for the decorative elements of this page, I don't want to give too much away since explaining some of these elements would be giving away spoilers in the book. For the storyline of the book, the main character is an 11-year-old boy named Jonas. Jonas lives in a seemingly perfect society in which all of his choices are taken care of for him. When the members of the community turn 12, they are assigned a job role to them. Jonas is assigned a very esteemed position called the Receiver of Memories. He will be trained by the Giver of Memories so that eventually he can counsel the people of the community using these memories. The Giver is a smaller sized book, but packs in a lot of serious topics and will give you a lot of things to think about throughout the whole story. This was a very nostalgic reread for me, and so I decided to give this book a solid 4 stars. After finishing that review, I'll flip ahead in my journal to start the spread for the Tattooist of Auschwitz. This was again a very serious book that was based on a true story. With that in mind, I wanted to keep the decoration very simple and to be respectful to these people's personal experiences and not include any elements or pictures that people might find offensive. So the only thing I used was a black and white striped washi tape and a picture of the real people behind this story. The Tattooist of Auschwitz had the main character Lowry. Lowry was Jewish and was taken as a prisoner to the Auschwitz concentration camp. There, Lowry himself was tattooed before he was forced to be the main tattooer of the camp. As the main tattooist, Lowry was given a slight bit of freedom that the other prisoners didn't have. The book tells how Lowry was able to use this little bit of freedom to help the people around him and to also fall in love with a woman named Gita. While this was a very somber and serious book, it also had a message of hope behind it. Throughout the entire story, Lowry was convinced that he had a hope of a future and that he wouldn't die in the camp. He was able to give this hope to Gita, and the book shows how they were able to use this hope to rely on each other and make it out in the end. Overall, I really liked learning about Lowry and Gita's personal experiences and really appreciate that they were able to share it with the world. However, I have read better written books than this. I thought the story was really inspiring, but the book felt really flat to me. I don't think this author did a good job of diving into the emotions and feelings of its characters. Personally, I felt like this would have been a much better book if it had been written by a different author. For those reasons, I rated this book 3.5 stars. On the next page, you'll see my review for Gathering Blue. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record before filming the decoration, so I'm sorry that you don't get to see that. For the decoration of this spread, I wanted to relate it to the title of the book, as well as a main plot point throughout the book. I used 2 different blue watercolor washi tapes, as well as blue flower stickers. You'll also see a reoccurrence of the watercolor splash stickers that I used on the Project Hail Mary spread as well. This time, I focus on picking out only the blue ones. Usually when I talk about a book that isn't the first in a series, I can't say too much about it. However, even though Gathering Blue is the second in the Giver series, it takes place with a different setting and different characters than the first book. While this book still has a dystopian vibe like The Giver, the setting of this is completely different. Instead of being very futuristic, this setting is much more primitive. The main character of this book is a young girl named Kira. Kira lives in a village where only the strong survive. Anyone who is ill or weak or disabled is not wanted in her village. She was born with a twisted leg, and her mother fought to keep her. At the beginning of the book, Kira sits alone because her mother has just died, and she doesn't know what she's going to do. However, she is saved from being cast out of the village because she has a special skill. There is a special robe in the village that requires very complex repairs and also has a blank spot that can only be filled in by a skilled threader. Kira is the only person in the village that can do this job, so she is allowed to stay there. And even though this book has a different setting and different characters than The Giver, the themes and concepts in both books are compared and contrast beautifully. I enjoyed reading this book just as much as the first one, so this book also got a 4-star rating. After completing my final review for the month, I'll flip back to my main April spread to put in my book covers and complete my stats. I track all my reading on an app called Storygraph. The app will compile all these stats for me, so I don't have to do it manually. For this month, the main genres that I read were dystopian, science fiction, and historical. For the books I read this month, 3 of them came from Libby and 1 came from Audible, and they were all audiobooks. 3 of the books were less than 300 pages, and only 1 was between 300 and 499 pages. I read 4 books this month with a total pages read of 1,104. My average rating was 3.94 stars, and the average book length was 276 pages. The average amount of time to finish a book was 7 days. After filling in all my stats, I had a little bit of empty space left over. I decided to use this space to add a little bit more decoration. I used the same washi tape and stickers from my initial setup. All of the materials and stationery I've used in this video will be linked down below in the description box. After completing my April monthly spread, I'll flip backwards in my journal to fill out my yearly pages. The first yearly page I'll fill out is my books read in 2025 spread. This page is used so that I can see all of the books I'll read in the year in one spot. I track which number the book is, the title, the author, and the rating. The next page is my on the shelf page. This is a visual representation of my goal of reading 40 books this year. I color in each book according to its star rating and then write the book title over top. On the right side of the page is my top TBR spread. As I said before, Project Hail Mary is one of the books on this spread, so I'll go in and record the star rating for this book. Flipping the page, we move on to my book bingo. On the right side of my page is my bingo prompts. Whenever I read a book that fits one of these prompts, I'll peel off the washi tape to reveal which square on the bingo board I'll need to fill in. Then I'll color in that square and write the book title over top. For this month, all 4 of the books that I read matched a prompt. I read a standalone book, a book with a male main character, a book based on a true story, and a book with a color in the title. Flipping the page, I'll move on to my prioritization matrix. This is how I'll decide my top 12 books of the year. Last year, I previously used a book bracket, but I didn't like how it only told me my top 1 book. Using this method, I'll be able to compare my top book from each month against each other, and it'll give me an accurate ranking of my top 12 books. Flipping the page, I'll move on to my last yearly spread, my series tracker. Finally, I'll move on to setting up my May spread. This month, I decided to go very cutesy and simple for my theme. I only used 2 washi tapes and 1 set of stickers. For the decoration, I used 1 plain pink washi tape and 1 washi tape that featured yellow, pink, and blue shapes. Layered over top of the washi tape, I placed stickers that were based on fairy tales. You'll notice that this page seems very sparse. In my initial setups, the only thing I do is my calendar and a bit of decoration. The rest of the space is left blank to leave room for my key, book covers, and stats. I don't know exactly how many books I'm going to read this month, so when I set this up at the beginning of the month, I leave most of the space open so that at the end when I update everything, I'll have enough space and I can play around with the layout. With one last bit of decoration, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that you'll come back next month to see how this spread looks filled out. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.